and it's horrible. It's hard to deal with, very hard to deal with. And my life will never be normal without knowing where my daughter is.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In this episode, we're going to deal with grandma's silence. It was one of the clues, kind of an obvious clue that I mentioned in the previous video. Well, in this video, we're going to flesh out that topic in more detail. We're going to go into 5 sort of subheadings dealing with Candy Bly's reaction, her response, or rather her lack of, given the disappearance of her 5-year-old granddaughter now 36 days ago. Once again, we're going to look at the grandma's silence and the grandma herself within the continuum and the context of everybody else. Is it normal? Does it make sense for the grandma not to say anything given where we are, given what is happening? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. I think I want to start off this episode just by letting some people know. I think some people think that I'm the person disabling comments. I sort of flick a switch and then you guys can't comment on certain videos. No, that is not up to me. YouTube decides that a video is too sensitive, and almost all the videos on this case, whether it's on my channel or anyone else's, a lot of the videos are being censored in that way because I think it's leading to speculation and it's leading to, I guess, complaints, right? And so as a result of that, it is being turned off. I just want to be clear again, I'm not the one turning them off, right? So please don't get upset with me. If I could, I would have them on, which is why I say like, share, leave a comment. If you can leave a comment, do. If you can't, I'm not the one who has disabled the comments. So what alternative is there if the comments are disabled? Well, you can join Patreon for as little as $1 a month, and you can join the conversation there. The content that appears here first appears on Patreon. You can also contact me on Twitter at Crime Rocket. And some of you are also going to other videos and leaving your comments for disabled comment videos somewhere else. So that's also an alternative. So the first point I want to make is simply comparing grandma to everyone else that's speaking out. I mean, who else is speaking out? Well, family friends like David Dodson, and he's not even a really close family friend. He'd never been to the residence before. He'd only known the family, according to him, for 3 months. So, but still, let's just say a family friend, David Dodson. Robin Lane, someone who knew Summer, who was Summer's friend from church, her Sabbath school teacher. She's also been speaking out and doing things, appearing in that little parade and speaking to the media and putting Facebook posts as well. Also, the pastor of the SDA Church, David Ryder, we've heard him making statements, including to the media, as well as another pastor, Joseph Broadwater, who came out of state, has also been making statements to the media. Then we've also heard Alison Harris, Macbeth's mother, going to the trouble, I think on, was it the 4th of July, or close to the 4th of July, certainly based on the fireworks playing in the background, to address speculation and to talk about what she knew, right? And she did so at length. There's also, I think, been her daughter saying what Macbeth said to her. And then there's also Rose Meyer, who's a friend, I guess, of the family as well, more specifically a friend of Grandma, right? And we're going to get to her in a moment. And then, of course, it's also Don and Candace. They've also been talking about what they know. So you've literally had almost everyone who can talk about this case, besides law enforcement, besides Leslie Earhart, the sheriff, the search coordinator, and the media people. Everyone is talking about it, but then in the midst of this is Grandma's silence. Does it make sense? Now, I suppose you could make the argument, and this is the second point, that Grandma is saying something, although I guess silently, on Facebook or through Facebook. She's put up a couple of posts, but if you look at it, there's really not a lot there. It's like too little butter on too much bread kind of thing. It's very thin, and there are actually other missing persons that she's put up since Summer disappeared. It's almost like she's moved on to, alerting people about other missing people. There aren't really any written appeals. I've heard the comment made that, well, because she's an introvert, she's got an excuse. Because she's an introvert, she's not the kind of person who would do that. Well, introverts don't have a problem with writing. I'm a fairly introverted person, and I can be quite extroverted in my writing, and yet you don't have that either. You don't have statements made on Facebook. Why not? Why isn't there even that sort of thing on Facebook? And that actually raises a really interesting and important point when we get to Grandma's bestie, and that's the third point we're going to deal with. Just a final point about the Facebook communications, the Facebook posts from Grandma. There's really not a lot there. It's they're sort of few and far between, and she doesn't seem to engage much. So there seems to be quite a lot of vitriol there, but you don't really kind of get a sense that this is someone who lost her own daughter 12 years ago, and now she wants to make sure it doesn't happen again. There's a sense of resignation. Do you agree? There's a sense of defeat, perhaps depression. Anyway, we now move on to the third point, Grandma's bestie. And I'm going to put a link in the video, in the description, to a video by Chasing Truth. And to her credit, Chasing Truth sent a couple of questions to Rose Meyer, and she answered them, and Chasing Truth then just provided those on her YouTube channel. I think it was 2 days ago. I'm not going to go through those questions and answers exhaustively. You can watch the video on your own time, but what I am going to say is just that Rose Meyer, well, that's how I would pronounce it. I'm sure you pronounce it Meyer. But she has sort of presented herself, identified herself, come forward as a voice for Candace Senior, as a voice for Candy, right? And she says, and this is, I think, a quote from her, she said something like, I became a voice for her mom, meaning the missing girl, Rosemary Bly. Bear in mind, she went missing as quite a young woman. I think she was 19 or 21 years old, but very young. And so Rose Meyer said, I became a voice for her mother. She had reporters calling me, and I stepped up to the plate. So this is kind of, the impression I get is it's happening again. Rose Meyer is sort of taking not the heat, but she's basically being the mouthpiece for Grandma, and not for the first time. She's doing it again. And the strange thing is that they're not even very close. Rose Meyer isn't, although she's Candace's closest friend, they haven't actually been in contact in nearly a decade. That's based on what Rose Meyer herself says. So you kind of get the sense that Grandma's closest friend is a Facebook friend who she never really communicates with either. In other words, you kind of get the sense that she's a bit of a loner herself, that Grandma is a bit of a loner. And I wonder what is really going on there. Is Grandma suffering from depression? Is Grandma wounded from all these years of wondering where her daughter is? Has she become kind of a wounded person, a wounded personality, a person that has sort of crept back into her shell? is she kind of a quiet, introverted person who sort of goes with the flow, right? Is she keeping secrets? Is she quiet because she's not allowed to say something? Someone has told her, do not talk to the media, right? And I just think it's quite strange that in lieu of Grandma's silence, someone else from out of state has got to come forward and basically sort of represent her, right? Don't you find that odd? The other thing that I find quite interesting is, although this person has come out of state to represent in a way Grandma, you don't actually have her doing that. You don't actually have her appearing on camera. To be honest, I still don't even know what she looks like or sounds like. So she's coming out of the woods in a way to represent Grandma, but then you still don't see her or hear from her, and it's sort of still done behind the sort of, via emails and via type statements. And I'm not saying that Rose Meyer is necessarily strange. I'm saying the situation is strange. Why can't Candace Senior, why can't Candy say how she feels about what's going on? Because surely it must be almost more painful for her than for anyone else. You know, she's lost a daughter 12 years ago without a trace. There was the 10-year anniversary just, I think, something like 2 years ago. And then and she appeared on camera there. She participated. And then 2 years later, the same thing seems to be playing out again in real time. And the question is, what are you going to do about it? And the answer seems to be, well, I'm going to hand over to my friend who I haven't spoken to for years. I know from Facebook. She's going to deal with it. Now, we get some kind of interesting information about the family via this friend of Grandma, and I'm going to go into that briefly here. She says that they aren't eating or sleeping, and I think that includes Grandma. Now, if you think about it, she's not eating or sleeping, so what else is there to do? If you're not sleeping and you're not eating, what else is there to do? Well, how about think about the case, think about what's going on. How about thinking about how you can help, right? And part of helping is making appeals to the public. It's the same thing the police are doing. The police are saying, guys, have you seen anyone driving this vehicle? And making appeals to the public. And we've seen it in missing persons cases before. Other family members come forward and they appeal. We saw it in the Madeleine McCann case. We saw it in the Ramsey case. You see it all the time. In the Casey Anthony case, you saw her parents standing up for Casey and appealing and wearing T-shirts and all that kind of thing. In a direct way, you see them on camera. You see them on the front lawn. You see them kind of engaging. Where's Grandma? In fact, Grandma's been so low profile that some people were wondering, well, is she still in Tennessee as she left? But apparently she is still in Tennessee. I think there's been some speculation that, has Don left or what is going on because their social media's kind of gone silent. I think the reason for that is Don is, from what I've understand, Don has stopped working. I don't know whether he stopped because he's decided to stop or he's not allowed to work or he can't work or he can't find work. But as a result of not working, is not getting in an income. It could also be that they've been getting a lot of money in or a lot of donations and maybe they feel they don't need to work. I don't know. But the bottom line is they're all at home and apparently the Wi-Fi has been cut off because they can't afford that. Their phones have been confiscated, and so this is everyone's, Candace, Don's, and Grandma's, and so they can't update Facebook without a phone, without a Wi-Fi connection, right? Does that make sense? But all the more reason now you can't say anything on Facebook. well, maybe you should say something directly. Maybe you should say something to the media, right? And I don't think there's a lack of opportunity to do so. I think there are always going to be media skulking about and law enforcement skulking about, and it just takes someone to say, hey, I actually want to say something. And I'm sure people will fall over themselves to make that happen. The YouTubers running around as well that are happy to take statements, and they're happy to provide, all the equipment and the opportunity to do so. I think the bottom line, though, is that this does appear to be Grandma's choice. And when I say that, I'm cognizant of the fact that it could be something that she was asked to do. Please don't talk to anyone. Someone may have said, don't talk to the media. Who might that someone have been? And what is quite interesting here is Rose Meyer kind of admitting that she doesn't get along very well with Don, that they just don't get on. He seems suspicious of her coming there in a crisis. He's never met her before, and I think that is understandable. But one also wonders why not just, someone is offering to help, offering support, why not be a bit more welcoming? But one also wonders, what is Don's relationship with Grandma? How do they get along? Now, I'm sure the folks on YouTube will have their own reasons for wanting to hear from Grandma. They want the next episode in this kind of ongoing soapy. But there are valid reasons. There are reasons that have to do with the efficacy of the investigation from law enforcement, that we know what is going on from Grandma, right? Because she's a crucial witness. She's actually mentioned, she's highlighted by her daughter, by Candace, as one of the last people to see Summer. So she's a crucial witness. She is also someone who was with Summer earlier in the day, so she can provide context from, so we can get context and a timeline from someone besides Candace. Now, Candace said, when she was asked about that by the media, what happened between then and then, Candace said something like, well, when you're having fun, it's quite hard to remember the time. And so that's why there are these big holes. Well, Grandma wasn't having fun, so surely Grandma could remember the timeline a little bit better, right? I don't know whether the excuse might be that she was medicated, but she certainly was well enough to take that video on the back seat. I assume she took it. And she sounds like she was compos mentis, doesn't she? So she's a crucial witness that can provide crucial information, first-hand information on Summer's condition. One could ask her, was Summer sleeping? Did you see Summer move? Did Summer say anything? Do you think Summer was alive? Was Summer sick? Was she injured? Did you see any kind of injuries? Was she cold? What is going on? You were there. What can you tell us? And also, what was Candace's response to whatever condition Summer was in? If she was sleeping, was she snoring? Did she say anything? Could you hear her breathing? Could you see her breathing? And when did she wake up? How long had she been sleeping? What did she eat before she slept? What did she eat after she woke up? All sorts of things like that. What sort of candy did you give to Summer? Do you still have the packet? Do you have the receipt? Where did you get the candy from? All of those things. So I'm going to pass on a comment made by someone about Rose Meyer. These aren't my observations, they're someone else's, but I thought they're worth passing on. So this is a quote from JC. She writes, when Candace said she was gone for 2 minutes, she didn't mean that literally. That's apparently a clarification made on her behalf by Rose Meyer, if I'm understanding this correctly. She went back out to the trailer to put on Grandma's knee brace. This is Candace, went back to the trailer to put on Grandma's knee brace, but it was actually 5 to 10 minutes that Candace was out there. Her knee started hurting when she was planting, and the injury to Grandma's knee happened a long time ago at the company they both worked for. She's on workers' compensation or disability. That's Grandma. She knows quite a bit about Grandma. That's Rose Meyer, knows quite a bit about Grandma, but not much about Candace and Don, and vice versa. They just had a few experiences with them and stressed over and over that these were her opinions and she might be wrong. What's also quite interesting is Rose Meyer, Grandma's bestie, felt short of saying that they did something to Summer, that the parents did something to Summer, but she did say, she said anything's possible. And, she couldn't be 100% to exclude them. So I think that is quite interesting. There doesn't seem to be any acknowledgement of an abduction, though, from Rose Meyer, which is quite interesting. Now, Rose Meyer made a point saying something about, all the things that Candace and Don have done to look for their child. And she made the comment, if that doesn't say find my child, what does? Well, I think one thing you would expect is for Grandma to appealing for help. As I say, she was one of the last to see Summer that day. She was the only adult to see Summer besides Candace, whose version is arguably a little dodgy. Just to reiterate, to her credit, Rose Meyer's not sure the family weren't involved in Summer's disappearance. But one thing she does say that I think could be potentially interesting is that Don and her don't get along. Her words are that they don't care for one another, or we don't care for one another. And that makes one wonder, are cracks forming? Is Grandma on her own? Is Grandma and Candace kind of a team? Is Don on the outs? Is Don telling everyone what to do? Who is in charge of this whole situation? And you can kind of imagine, if someone is in charge and someone needs to be in charge, then someone coming from out of state could potentially upset the apple cart, couldn't it? The final point I want to make is that up until the present day, so day 36 since Summer disappeared, Grandma has basically remained silent. I haven't seen any statements she's made, including on Facebook. So something like that, a protracted silence, can be construed as consent, meaning something has happened that is unforgivable, unacceptable, unusual, beyond the norm, whichever word you want to use, suspicious, troubling, serious, all of those things. And yet a person who was right there when these events played out is remaining silent. Why? Why is that the case? Is that normal behavior? Is that something that is a valid excuse for an introvert? What do you guys think? In the next episode, I'm going to be dealing with two crucial questions for Don and Candace. This is kind of a test that one uses throughout true crime. And we're going to apply these two key questions to Candace and Don, and indirectly they also apply to Grandma. So look out for that. That'll be in the next episode, dealing with the mysterious disappearance of 5-year-old Summer Wells in Tennessee. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.